So just a quick note before I begin, I will be saying next slide when I move to the next slide, that way you can keep along with me. So hello everyone, today I am going to be presenting to you about sharks. I'm going to start off with a quick question. Who here has seen any of the Jaws movies? So if you have not, it is about a gigantic shark that wreaks havoc on the fictional island called Amity Island in New York. It was, according to the Reader's Digest, it was the first motion picture to gross $100 million when it came out in June of 1975. So it was a very big movie. It was the biggest of its kind at the time. And it has led to a lot of fear around sharks and the ocean in general. And it also portrays sharks wrong as well as these man killers, when in reality they are actually pretty gentle creatures. So, my name is Blake Berent, and I am an applied exercise science major here at the University of Michigan, and I am a sophomore. You may be wondering why I am presenting about sharks when my major has nothing to do with sharks. And that's because I used to have a very big interest in sharks when I was in elementary and middle school. I used to study them all the time. I had many books and movies on sharks, and I knew just about everything about them. At least I felt like back then. And I always wanted to become a marine biologist because I loved to study sharks. It was always a passion of mine, and as I grew older, I found new passions and kind of shied away from that, especially now, living near the ocean, being from Michigan. But I still have always had that passion in the back of my mind. So to all of us, how are sharks relevant? Why am I giving this presentation? Ann Arbor, is more than 500 miles away from the nearest saltwater where sharks live. But there's a very real fear every time we take that first step into the water. We're always thinking in the back of our minds, is there going to be a shark? Do I have to be careful? Some people may scan the water, see if there's dark objects swimming. A lot of you may even live closer to the ocean. I don't personally know that, but the issue is that there is a very real fear of sharks every time any of us steps into the water. And should we really fear them though? So today I'm going to go over how threatened we should be of sharks, a historical account of shark attacks called the Shark Attacks of 1916, and a few movies that wrongly portray sharks. Alright, so to start off with a few statistics on shark attacks. According to the Florida Museum in 2019, there was a total of 140 human-shark interactions. That could be anything from unprovoked attacks, where there was 64 of those, or provoked attacks, which include things like fishing, feeding, touching, stuff like that. There's a total of 5 deaths in 2019, and only 2 of those were from unprovoked attacks. So it's not like the other 3 deaths were people asking to be attacked, but they were not in the safest of situations. And in the US alone, there was only 41 total interactions, which was up a lot from 2018, where there was only 9. But there was also 0 deaths, so nobody died of shark attacks in 2019. And the 41 total interactions is also a little above the average of what it usually is, so just to throw that out there. So let's look at some other relevant statistics of dying to see how dangerous or how common shark attacks are. So just to put into perspective, there was 5 total deaths due to shark attacks in all of 2019. But there are 3,287 deaths per day due to car accidents across the world, which I don't know if you want to do the math, but that is a lot more per year as well. There's also 538 deaths due to plane accidents in 2018, and you are more likely to die from cancer, heart disease, stroke, flu, accidental poisoning, falls, bike accidents, drowning, and even train accidents than you are to die from a shark attack. some other animal attacks, as you see here. There's 59.8 deaths per year from venomous animals such as spiders, frogs, scorpions, snakes, and there's also 15.5 deaths per year from dogs. Now, we don't think of dogs usually to be very vicious, but we do know that they can be. But there's 15.5 deaths per year just from dogs, just this cute little dog here. And just to put that into perspective, it's about 5 per year for sharks. So you're more likely to die from a dog attack than a shark attack. Next slide. So to summarize the statistics, there's a lot of things that we should be more fearful of than just sharks. Sharks usually like to keep to themselves for the most part, and a lot of attacks are actually presumed, or they are suspected to be from sharks mistaking humans for food, such as seals, sometimes sea turtles, and as you can see in this picture, they look pretty similar, but sharks don't have the greatest eyesight, so they can commonly misidentify humans for food instead of seals. It's not like sharks want to go out and be eating humans all the time. Now, I will talk about the shark attacks of 1916. It's one of the most prominent stories of shark attacks in the history of shark attacks, or the world, whatever you want to call it. It was 5 attacks in 12 days along the Jersey shore. It resulted in 4 deaths, and as it was the first attacks of its kind, not a lot was known about sharks at this time, so these ones really struck a lot of fear. Especially, it was a very warm summer, a lot more people were going into the water, and so with this, a lot of people became fearful as well. And these shark attacks kind of were the beginning of fear of sharks. They were just kind of unknown fish before this. So the first attack occurred at dusk, about 50 yards offshore. The guy was only in chest-high water. He was just swimming when all of a sudden he was attacked by a shark. He was finally pulled into shore, but he lost all of one leg and most of another and was pronounced dead. It was the first attack of its kind, and fear was sent throughout the region, but it was still only on the 18th page of the newspaper because this was around World War I and there was a lot more relevant news. So it was still in the newspaper, as you can see in this clip here, but it wasn't a huge actually, this is the aftermath. This newspaper clip is the aftermath of these shark attacks, but this particular newspaper clip was the 18th page, so it wasn't a huge deal, but there was some fear sent throughout the region. The next attack was 5 days later and 45 miles north, which that's not a very long distance for a shark to cover in 5 days, but a man was swimming past the boundaries of like regular beachgoers, and all of a sudden he started screaming and flailing his arms, and he was being attacked by a shark, and he lost both legs below the knees and was later pronounced dead. This was witnessed by hundreds of people. It was the middle of the day, lots of people on the beach, and so these eyewitness accounts, that everybody was just very scared. They didn't really know what to think. They all presumed it was sharks, though, just because that's what they were kind of told. And but scientists were not so sure on this. They were still trying to claim that the waters were safe. They didn't want to lose their tourist money. So they tried to come up with as many different descriptions of what could have happened. And these descriptions some of these descriptions included killer mackerels, sea turtles, and even German U-boats, since this was around World War I again. Which, I mean, if we're being logical here, it's obviously from sharks. But scientists were trying to explain otherwise. Again, they didn't want to lose all this money from tourism. The next 3 attacks all occurred on the same day. It was actually in Matawan Creek, which is 11 miles inland in fresh water. The first victim was an 11-year-old boy who was swimming with his friends when he was all of a sudden dragged underwater. The kids screamed in fear. It was a very small town, and they went into the town and found help. And as there was people in the water searching for the body, and there was a 24-year-old athletic man that was known around the town because he was very athletic. He was searching for the boy's body, and all of a sudden, he was attacked by the shark. and 10 pounds of flesh was ripped from his thigh, and then he later died. 30 minutes later, upstream, another man was attacked. He was just near the ladder, kind of just about to get out of the water, when he felt a tug on his leg, and his friends were right there. They were able to pull him out, and he was the only survivor of these 5 attacks. So the aftermath, as you can tell, sharks weren't known to go in fresh water at this time, and so there was fear everywhere. And even Woodrow Wilson was offering federal aid to drive away these quote-unquote man-eating monsters. And so this was actually coined as the largest scale animal hunt in history. So people took to the water. They were armed with anything from rifles, harpoon guns, axes, and some people were even just throwing dynamite into the water just to try and kill sharks. They wanted to find the killer, and they were all fearful of any other sharks anyways at this point. So they finally killed a shark, and they thought this was the shark that killed these people. It was a 7.5-foot great white shark. It was 350 pounds. There was a human shin bone and rib bone found in its stomach, so they knew that it obviously had killed people. Next slide. So since this shark was found in freshwater Mattawan Creek, there's many explanations for that. The first of which being high water. They think that some salt water had mixed in with the fresh water and it was able to swim upshore. But then with more studying and later, scientists found that bull sharks actually can swim in fresh water. They can survive in fresh water because their kidneys are able to recycle salt, which is a unique characteristic for them. But this shark that was the supposed killer was labeled as a great white shark. Now, again, shark science was very early, in its early stages at this point, so they may have misidentified and is now believed that it was a bull shark. But there's explanations that could point to it being a great white shark. So just some freshwater shark sightings. There's been bull sharks found 2,500 miles up the Amazon River, which is fresh water. There's been many confirmed sightings in the Mississippi River, as far up as Illinois. And as you can see in this picture, these were the 2 guys that caught it. They thought some big fish was terrorizing their fish trap, and so they set out with, I think it was a metal net to catch whatever this big fish was, and it ends up being this bull shark. This was back, I think, in the 1930s. And so there's also even been possible sightings in Lake Michigan. Now, Lake Michigan is a very long ways from the ocean. You'd have to go all the way up the St. Lawrence Seaway, all through Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Huron. But that's not confirmed sighting. That's the only one in Lake Michigan. There's been other reports of shark attacks in Lake Michigan. One was right after the movie Jaws came out, and the reporter has since claimed that it was false. It was a false report. So again, next slide. They could not confirm that all the attacks were from one shark, but there were no attacks after this, so it probably was. And it's really the main reason fear for sharks ever began, because before this, they were thought of as quote-unquote large, unintelligent big fish with big teeth. Take that as you wish, but they're a lot more intelligent than that. I could have a whole other presentation just on how intelligent they are, but so again, shark science was very new in this time, and it's now speculated to have been a bull shark. But this fear of sharks inspired many, many movies, including Jaws. But I will talk about these now. So Jaws, again, there's four Jaws movies. They were all pretty much inspired by these attacks, because these attacks led to the original fear of sharks, pretty much. Then, as you can see, Finding Nemo. If you remember Finding Nemo, the big shark was chasing Nemo and Dory, and that's just not how sharks really work. Maybe for fish might be fearful like that, but they don't feed on humans like that. But that's not how you take that movie. You take that as they are just killers. So, and then one of my personal favorites is called Soul Surfer. It wasn't so much about sharks, but It was about a girl who was attacked by a shark while surfing, and she made a miraculous comeback and ended up surfing competitively. And I don't want to spoil it because it's a really good movie, and I do recommend you go watch. But there was only one small part about sharks, but it contributes to the fear of sharks. So, in conclusion, shark attacks are not as common as we think. The statistics can prove that. And we should not fear them as much as we do, as the attacks aren't that common. Most fear surrounding sharks comes from the shark attacks of 1916, and excuse me, and most shows inaccurately show sharks. So just keep that in mind when you're watching these movies, that they aren't as vicious as they are shown. So with this last picture here, just every time you step into the ocean, I just want you to think about that you are more likely to die from a dog attack than a shark attack, just to ease those fears a little bit. Thank you for listening.